Welcome to biology. We'll be covering 28.3 in this section. This will be third of the four sections that will be on your 28 chapter quiz at the end of the week. For biology 7th period, you will be taking your quiz on Monday. I had a mix up with the May 4th. I had the wrong one. The wrong class, so therefore you guys will be taking that quiz on Monday, and then we will start chapter 29. Fourth period biology, you will be as scheduled, quiz on Friday. Okay, so seventh period, your quiz will be on Monday. So I will remind you of that as well. So 28.3, we're going to be talking about reproduction. I'm going to go kind of through this pretty quick, not talk too much about asexual, sexual. We've talked about that quite a bit. Asexual is pretty much cloning or taking a piece of the actual organism and you're regrowing it. It's going to create the exact same organism. So therefore, there's no genetic diversity. Sexual is you need a partner. Therefore, you have two parents, and you're going to create genetic diversity. There are a lot of animals in the kingdom that are going to have variances here as far as gender. You have the clownfish here. The clownfish here is going to actually switch its gender as it matures. So if starting off as a female, then as it matures, it's going to get change into a male. You also have animals that are going to have both organs, male and female organs, and produce both sperm and eggs. In the majority of those cases, the animal still does not fertilize their own eggs, so they will still need some sort of partner to do that. So that is pretty much we're going to be looking at once reproduction happens, fertilization. So you have a medusa and a polyp here. So you have the medusa bud, the polyp. It's going to break off. Here you go, and it goes through all this process until eventually you get the medusa. So you have fertilization, blastula, planula, and it keeps going off until it will bud off here, and now you have this medusa or jellyfish for the most part. All right, let's talk about fertilization. Okay, fertilization is sperm fertilizing the egg, right? Taking half of the DNA and the other half of the DNA and creating an individual. Now, this does not happen in asexual, as it does not need fertilization. It's got both sets of DNA already. So we're only talking about sexual reproduction here. Internal, it's simple. The eggs are going to be fertilized inside the body. External, simple. Eggs are going to be fertilized outside the body. So invertebrates, they're going to be fertilized by sperm taken in from the surrounding environment. So you will have some sort of process of taking in that environment which the sperm is deposited in. Chordates, you have sperm packets in some amphibians, but most have an organ that's going to be used to deposit the sperm in the female. The external fertilization, you have invertebrates are going to release a large number of sperm and eggs in water. Chordates, most fish spawn in pairs or in large pools. Now, the reason why the sperm count in external fertilization is much higher is because there's nothing there to really protect it. And even when the eggs are fertilized, there's still nothing there to protect it. We'll talk a little bit about the egg and the amniotic sac and all that and how it's different on land. But because of the environment, because of the dangers, you have to produce a lot of sperm, a lot of eggs, and chance that you're going to get reproduction, and that's going to occur. You're going to be able to be successful. Think of it kind of as if like a gymnosperm in the plant world, right? If they reproduce by the wind, they're going to produce a lot because they're pretty much relying on chance that the wind blows it and that it's going to fertilize a female cone So that's pretty much the same thing, is that females will deposit their eggs somewhere, and then males will deposit sperm in the hopes that it's going to fertilize, and then not only just once those are fertilized, it's going to survive. So you need a lot of eggs and a lot of sperm in order for that to be as effective as possible. So here you can see the difference in internal, external. Here you have a porifera or a sponge. It's going to go inside here, fertilize, and then that's going to go outside, form here, and then it's going to grow into a sponge and so forth. Here you have male fish, female fish lays the eggs. The male fish will pretty much deposit the sperm in the area, and that will then fertilize the eggs for those fish. Now, if you go back to the last slide, it talks about fish either doing it in pairs or in schools. Most of them do it in pairs. Some do it in schools. So what happens once that fertilization occurs? Well, now you're going to have embryo, and that's how it develops. And this is kind of a little bit different for these animals. You have three types of embryo development. You have oviparous, ovoviviparous, and viviparous. So oviparous is embryos developed in eggs outside of the parent's body. So what that means is, think of like a chicken, right? So that's what this is talking about. Oviparous, okay, is animals, or the embryo develops in an egg, okay, for the most part. Okay, there's going to have some sort of, usually a protective covering on it, and it's going to develop outside of the body of the female or whoever is the carrying. Okay, most invertebrates are this. Many fish and amphibians, most reptiles, all birds, and a few odd mammals. Those being the platypus is one that comes to my mind that actually will lay eggs, and it is not going to be developed inside. So they'll have the yolk and things like that, which we'll get into as far as nutrients, similar to that of kind of like a seed. For plants, that's pretty much what's happening here, is that you need all the nutrients in there. You need a liquid environment, and then you could be able to some way burst out of that shell and come to the world. Over here, I'm going to jump down here. Viviparous, okay? So I skipped ovoviviparous for the time being, but viviparous are embryos obtained nutrients from the mother's body. So what this is saying is that it is inside of the, or not necessarily inside, but somehow the mother is providing nutrients for it. So in the egg here, there's going to be the yolk, right? That yolk is going to be what is going to be causing nutrients and things around that can feed that embryo and help it develop. Well, in a mammal, okay, you have what is called a placenta. That placenta is going to be used to help nourish the embryo. Okay, so oviparous is outside the body. Viviparous is inside the body, and then you have an ovoviviparous, which are embryos developed inside mother's body, but they rely on a yolk sac. So they're inside the body, but they do not revolve, or they do not result in relying on the mother for nutrients, right? They have a yolk sac in it. You'll see this a lot in sharks. Okay, that's why you have the sharks there. So the difference between these is, this is an egg, okay, no affiliation with the mother at all, outside the body, and it doesn't need nourishment from it. Okay, the egg will have all of that nourishment there. The viviparous is inside the mother, okay, no egg, and relies on the mother for nutrition or nourishment. And then ovoviviparous is inside the mother, but does not rely on the mother because of the yolk sac. So those three differences there. And here's some examples here. You have a baby, you have a bird here, okay, you have turtle, here that these eggs here are inside, but do not rely for this said turtle species. Here is an example of metamorphosis. Okay, these are kind of the life cycles of some animals. Now you're going to have amphibians that are going to go through this. Tadpoles to frogs. It's pretty much what it is going from larva or from an egg, from fertilization all the way up to adult, and that's pretty much what a life cycle is. Now you see this here. This here you don't have any metamorphosis that's happening. Okay, you have this animal is pretty much going to stay the same. Over here you have quite a bit of metamorphosis that is going to be happening. You have the egg. That egg hatches. You're going to get a caterpillar. That caterpillar is going to go into chrysalis. All right. In this process, it is metamorphosizing into a adult butterfly. So you go from this caterpillar here to a butterfly here. So that would be a complete metamorphosis. Okay, and these will have a larva phase. They're free swimming or usually at a drift. These butterflies here undergo a complete metamorphosis, and they're controlled by hormones. Simply, you reach a certain stage, it's going to cause you to go on to the next stage for the most part. So if you're looking at the incomplete metamorphosis here, right? Complete here is that you're changing completely, pretty much one insect to the next, or one organism to the next. Here you're going to have the eggs, hormones are going to kick in, you're going to hatch. Here you have the first stage of nymph. Okay, then you're going to have your first molt, hormones again, you grow a little bit bigger. Remember we talked about the skeleton limiting growth, so therefore you get rid of it, you can grow a little bit bigger, and then you have the second, third, fourth, fifth molt, and then now you have an adult. So that's kind of this process, but done a little bit differently. Instead of being the same and getting bigger, it's going to change completely, and it's going to happen in this cocoon there. All right. So diversity in chordates. One is going to be the amniotic egg. Okay. The amniotic egg is going to separate us from fish. That's going to pretty much allow us to, or chordates, to have to reproduce on land. Right. The egg is going to develop outside the mother, out of water, without drying out. So it's important that the amniotic egg or amniotic sac is used and understood, that not necessarily always outside the mother, but it allows for that adaptation, right? And we're talking about the amniotic sac. It allows for it to develop outside the mother, out of water. Why? Because it's going to keep it from drying out. So in mammals, you have three types of mammals here as far as the amniotic egg or the amniotic sac and how that works. You have what are called monotremes, which are soft-shelled amniotic eggs that incubate outside the body. These eggs hatch in 10 days, nourished by mild from mammary glands. So it's going to be, once they hatch, then they're going to, the mother will bring them or nourish them through their mammary glands. You have marsupials. These monotremes here, that's kind of the platypus, going to lay the eggs that you kind of see. Marsupials will bear live young that usually complete their development in the external patch. So they are going to give birth, they're going to be live, but they're not fully developed. They're going to finish that inside an external pouch. So these would not necessarily develop within an organism. It's going to be on the outside, but still developing and relying on the female that gave birth. And then you have your common placental mammals that use the placenta to provide nourishment inside the mother's body. Allows for birth at fairly advanced stage of development. So that's why gestation or the time frame for pregnancy is much larger in these animals because it allows for these birth to be at a larger or a farther down the road of development. These only 10 days here. If you were to think of it in terms of humans, these monotremes here are only pregnant for 10 days. Okay, and these are going to be I'd have to look this up, but these are going to not be as long as well, simply because they're at a very low level of development, but they're going to end up developing in the pouch as well. And then you have placental mammals that are developed a lot longer down the road. So here's kind of a diagram of that egg. You have the shell. It's going to keep it from drying out. It's going to keep it from the environment, protection, things like that. Then you have this yolk sac here. The albumin is this liquid that it's going to be sitting in. The yolk here is going to be pretty much the nourishment that is going to provide for the animal to eventually grow into a an animal. Then you have the embryo here. So this is a typical diagram of an egg. Here, this fluid, the albumin, that is going to keep it moist. You have nourishment here in the yolk. Okay, it's trapped as well in what is a yolk sac. That's that sac that once you break it, all that the yellow in the egg kind of flows out. Well, that's all that nourishment, the tasty part of the egg, for the most part. So that's what this is. Now, it'll be similar to this for the most part in mammals, okay, that or placental mammals, I should say. Instead of the yolk sac, they're going to have some sort of like umbilical cord, because remember they're going to need the mother to provide nourishment to them, so they have some sort of umbilical cord here that they'll get their nourishment from their mother, and instead of a shell, because it's inside of the animal, they won't need a shell, but they will have a placenta that is around it that's going to keep it kind of separate. And then you have marsupials here that are going to give live birth, but then you can see down here it's going to finish development inside of an external pouch of that of the mother. All right, so that's reproduction. Lot of difference and a lot of different things in the animal kingdom, but to try to go over some of the common ones. So, thank you for listening.